Jean-Francois, welcome back. Let me start with the story that I guess in Journal de Montréal over the weekend, the fact that our health network here has been increasing steadily over the past 5 years. There are now more than 4,500 more people in the system since 2019, 2020. So we're talking, first of all, about a bloated system to begin with. It seems to be getting only bigger, even though this government has come out and said, we have a new head of Santé Québec, a new assistant head. What difference will that make given what we're seeing here?
Well, that's before the implementation of Santé Québec. That will take a year. They've told us that it would be fully operational only in April of next year. So, but in fairness, you have to say that when Gaétan Barrette was the Liberal Minister of Health, he had decided that he would cut 2,500 mid-management positions in health. And he did that. And it cost a lot of money. I remember that they had underfunded the expenditures for departures. They had to come back on it. And then, you remember during the pandemic, when people realized that CHSLDs and other units, smaller hospitals, did not have a boss on site to deal with emergencies or anything else. And then the government said, well, we're going to have someone who's going to be in charge of every physical unit to be able to manage emergencies and the run of the place. And so they had to rehire some of these 2,500 people that Mr. Barrette did ask to leave. And they went beyond that. They really did go beyond that. So when you look at the whole curve, it's difficult to say. Some of the hirings were necessary, even just for the health and security of both the employees and the patients. Did they go above board? I don't know, but we're still in a system in flux. So there you are.
There's 164 managers in this health network now who don't directly actually care for patients, who now earn more than $200,000 a year. Does that seem extreme, or is that not something we can sit back and go, wait a second, something's wrong with that?
Well, in terms of salaries, I think there's an out-of-control upward spiral of salaries in the public sector that used to be immune from that. Mid-managers and managers are paid too much. My position, and I'm an outlier on this, I think nobody working for the Quebec government should make more than the premier. That should be just the rule. And now we have dozens and dozens who make more than the premier. And it's just a breakdown of what used to be called public service, that you're going to do that for public service. Once you had done your 20 years, you could become a millionaire in the private sector, and that was fine. But now it's no longer the case. So in terms of salaries, we can have this debate. In terms of number of people needed to manage the system, the health system is 300,000 employees in total. So when you make just a rule of thumb, then it takes hundreds of people to manage that.
Yeah, with respect to the salaries here, and I was talking about somebody else, but on a different sort of subject. The idea being, it seems like the government now, either fewer people want to work for the government, and those who do want to be paid that kind of money, because if not, their option is to go to the private sector, where allegedly they would make much more money. Kind of puts the government in a bit of an odd situation, does it not?
Well, we made the quiet revolution with the people who made a third of what the premier did, and they were some of the best and the brightest. And they created the modern Quebec state, the modern federal state, with salaries that were not competitive with the private sector, because they thought they had a mission. And now there's no longer any mission to be. But I still say that if you gave $1 a year to be the president of the Caisse de dépôt or Hydro-Québec, you'd still have the best and brightest wanting to do that, because it's a challenge of a career. And once you get out of that, then you make millions of bucks in the private sector. But this completely broke down.
Is that on the PQ's agenda in case Pierre Plamondon gets into power? That's what's going to
No,
happen?
that was my position.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It was not $1. I would say the premier's salary. Yeah.
So what does the premier make? A little over 240, 250?
It used to be 250 before the raise. Now I think it's closer to 300,000.
Right.
And that's not counting his wife. Well, his wife doesn't work, but and you say, well, you're going to lead Hydro-Quebec for 300,000, and whatever your wife makes, why do you need more?
Okay. I just think, obviously, this in the wake of the story that we found out last week, where the head of the case that they posed making over $4 million a year, and a few people under him are making well over $1 million a year, and a lot of people wonder why that's the case. You bring up an interesting point. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to go there, but it is an interesting point.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they say, let me finish, like rectors of universities, okay? I was in university for about 10 years, and they're all taking the elevator, They all make comparisons with bigger universities elsewhere in Canada, elsewhere in the U.S., and the elevator always goes up. And one of the arguments is if we don't give them the big bucks, they will be taken by these other universities who offer more. How many times did that happen in the history of rectors in Quebec? Zero. Never happened. And I'm telling you, if the rector of the Université de Montréal was paid only, let's say, $300,000 a year, and Harvard wants to give him $1 million, I say, go. It's going to be good for the rayonnement of Quebec. And we'll find something nearly as good as you to do the University of Montreal job in the meantime.
It's all about money, I guess. That's where we've gone. Let me ask you about Quebec Solidaire. The news just keeps getting, I think, worse and worse. Open letter last week signed by 40 current and former QS members condemning Gabriel Nadeau as his pragmatic leadership. I thought the idea of pragmatic leadership was a good thing. Why is it a bad thing in his case?
Well, and today he had a letter praising his shift by 80 signatories, and some pretty surprising ones, because some of the founding members of Québec Solidaire, who used to be more on the Marxist side of Québec Solidaire. So some of these issues will be sorted out, and people will count themselves, pro or con, at the end of the month when they'll have a Conseil National dealing with their new manifest. That's called La Déclaration de Saguenay. But for me, if Québec Solidaire is different from the PQ, which is social democratic, is because Québec Solidaire was to the left enough to want to change the system. They wanted to, at some point, leave capitalism. And I think it's very legitimate to criticize the system and want democratically to try and change it profoundly. But now, this new declaration could have been signed by Dominique Anglade. Michelle Cochenne, who's on a panel with me every day, she said, I would have signed it. And so what's the differentiation? If you had the position that you thought the system was rotten and has to be changed, now your position is that you're going to tweak at the margins. Well, why do we need you?
So has Quebec Solidaire lost? Has Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois lost his way?
Well, I think it was always his way. I think you were always wanting to make Québec Solidaire a reformist party and not a revolutionary party, democratically revolutionary. And now he's at the point where he's trying to do this or leave. And that's the crux of what's being debated now. But to me, it's he's uprooting the soul of the party doing that. And then it's going to be very difficult to justify why they're not with the PQ.
All right. Well, it's interesting anyway. We shall see where this one goes. I know they have a big convention coming up pretty soon. We'll see what happens there. Jean-Francois, thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.